I am Locutus of Borg. Resistance is futile. Your life, as it has been, is over. From this time forward, you will service us.
No! We will not service Washington.
Mr. Worf, fire.
Well, I know we told you we weren't going to be back until after the first, but lucky you, we are here and ready to go. And this is the Renegade and the Rambler show, the end of the year extravaganza. Why? Because extravaganza sounds so much cooler than review. And it was Suzanne's idea, so we'll blame her. So anyway, I'm your host or sub-host, or how are we going to do this? But I'm Dan Bailey. I'm here at the control panels, just working away feverishly. Anyway. And I'm joined tonight by Jeff Johnson, and Suzanne Sherman's with us tonight because it's the end of the year extravaganza. Where else are you going to get this kind of political thought, and some would say craziness, in the world, if not on the Cerberus radio network at 8 o'clock at night Eastern Standard Time on the 31st of December? I almost said January. I don't know why. But anyway, how are you two doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Just got home. I've only been home for a few hours from work. Worked this evening. I actually have tomorrow off, and then it's back to it.
That's a shocker.
How about you, Suzanne?
We're doing great. I had some beautiful snow up here. I just posted some pictures of the Moonrise. I'm in a very narrow canyon here, and the road goes north-south. So if you look directly due east, we have the most amazing moonrise. So I took some pictures and decided rather than stay up and watch some silly ball drop in a communist hellhole back east, I'm going to enjoy the moonrise in God's country out here in the hinterlands of Utah. So that's my night.
Easy now. I got to drive through that communist hole here for the next 6 months.
You have my sympathies.
Hey, it was that communist hole or the other communist hole. I mean, the capital that I've been driving through, where those people do not know how to drive through snow. We had a little bit of snow hit here over the weekend. Well, it was Friday night into Saturday. The people thought they could do 90 until they couldn't. And then they'd spin out and tag the guardrail. And then all of a sudden, everybody would lock their brakes up at one time because, oh, no, it's slick.
Well, you know,
it was fun driving home last Friday from Richmond.
That happens out here too. Even in Utah, where winter, we get, about a 6-month-long winter where we live here. A lot of people in Park City, where the Winter Olympics have been held, and actually right now they have the trials going on. I mean, I think the Olympics are in a month, and they're still doing the trials. So people are forgetting how to drive in the snow. We see that all the time. So I keep my trailer hitch on my truck, and I have a cattle guard on my truck as well.
I don't like trailer hitches on the back of vehicles, but that's another story for another day. They always
I
tend to equal
spent a
bad
few.
results.
I spent a few months right after graduating high school in South Carolina. And you want to talk about people that go absolutely insane with the first snowflake. There's a snowflake in the air, and people don't know how to drive, and they all rush off to the grocery store because they're all going to die because they don't have a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread.
Milk and bread.
One flake. I mean, it's just amazing.
We will die without French toast.
My wife's friend's going to shoot me for saying this, but she told my wife they were going to get 2 feet of snow in Birmingham. I told my wife, they have my sympathies. If they need help, I will sign a volunteer list at my work, and I'll go down there and drive truck and show all those southern rednecks how to do it. However, apparently the 2 feet of snow was canceled, and they're only getting 2 inches of snow, and they're in total freak out mode. But that's the South for you.
That's the South. I mean, it was crazy. I'd never seen anything like it. And quite honestly, I lived in Steamboat Springs, Colorado for 6 years. So, Suzanne, I know exactly what you go through. When I moved there in the end of October, the beginning of November, we had 10 days of snow, and we got 110 inches of snow in 10 days. That's 11 feet of snow in 10 days. Back here, you get 4 inches of snow, and everyone loses their absolute freaking mind.
Yeah.
They don't know how to drive. They crash.
We get 1 or 2 storms every winter where I hear this howling wind, and I just wake up and said, "Yep, we're here for a while." And my neighbors, volunteer to get their plow trucks because my Ranger with the plow is not going to handle 4-foot drifts to dig me out. And usually I'll stay for about a week and say, "No, I'm good," but it gets real when I'm out of half and half for my coffee. So, okay, come get me.
Well, I was
just
admiring your sign over your right shoulder about the coffee.
We just need to figure out a way to link a snowblower into your drivetrain on that truck of yours, and then you can just snowblow your way out of it.
Right. Well, even because we have a really steep curved driveway, so I bought myself some really nice aggressive treads this year. So now it just marches right up. Even the Subaru can't make it out of the driveway right now. My son and I actually had a little brouhaha the other day. He insisted on taking the Subaru, and of course it lost traction. Then he backed it into the snowbank. He would kill me if he knew I was talking about this. But I let him get the winch on our side by side, move it around, and I got my way and drove the truck out. So it's amazing because when you don't live in the snow, and this is why I can see how the South, they don't have the infrastructure, the preparedness, the resources, the salt, the plows handy like we do up here. When I moved here from California, we never had white Christmases. We didn't have these snows. So it's just another reason, tying into what we talk about here on our show, on all of our shows really, is how important it is to be prepared. I'm going to try and find this link where somebody, a woman and her 2 children almost perished in a vehicle that was stuck. In fact, I'm going to look for that while you guys chat for a moment. Yeah.
Well, we discussed this at work today. I said to one of the guys at work, I said, quite honestly, you should have hats, gloves, dry clothes, everything you need in your vehicle all winter long, because if you break down, you get wet. And tonight we're looking at dangerous cold weather. I mean, they're looking at 10 below. That's far colder than it needs to be if you get wet, to kill you. I mean, it doesn't need to be that cold to end up with hypothermia and die. So, the preparedness thing we talk about is really important. I'm sorry, Danny, go ahead.
I was going to say, you get hypothermia dry trying to light the fire within like 5 minutes at negative 10.
Yeah. Well, I just know that it was in the single digits during the day, and I was outside for a few minutes. I was going from one door to another door, and I had just my bare hands. I was in my heavy jacket and stuff, but my hands were bare. And just that about 25 feet, maybe that's all it was, 25, 30 feet between doors, my hands hurt really, really bad because the temperature was so cold. You could end up with frostbite within a few minutes at those temperatures. So, a good friend of mine, John the cop from Philadelphia, is going to be at the Mummers Parade tomorrow. I told John to be careful tomorrow. dress appropriately because the temperatures are going to be dangerous.
Yep.
And, you know, he already knows that. He was posting about all the stuff he's going to wear. But, you know, it's things that people need to think about. And, you know, it's one of the things we talk about here at Cerberus. We often talk about prepping. I tell people we talk everything from prepping to politics. And, well, right now, you have to start thinking about these temperatures, because it is dangerous. I mean, it is life-threatening weather we're having.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, just standing outside on my porch for the few minutes I was there, taking pictures of the moonrise, my hands were very cold. And I just imagined, what would it be like if I were caught right now outside? You're driving, you have a breakdown, or let's say you go out of control and the integrity, the structure of your vehicle is compromised and you have to stay warm. What do you have? My son drives around, he has his city shoes, these Vans, these tennis shoes, and I say, you need some winter boots. You will get frostbite if you try to walk anywhere in there. Here's a story. It's coming out of 13wham.com. This was a woman. She was trapped for 9 hours. She was in Brockport. Where's Brockport? I don't know where that is.
Brockport, what state?
Brockport, Byron. Let's see. I'm not sure.
Province, which would be Canada or Australia.
Yeah, she was, well, it wouldn't be Australia now because it's summer there. In fact, that's very tempting right now. This woman was trapped in her car for 9 hours after a car crash. What did I mention earlier? When the structural integrity of your car is compromised. She doesn't remember the crash. She remembers waking up in her car. This was November 30th. She was driving home and she swerved to avoid a deer. You know what, folks? Just hit the damn deer. They say the car flipped 3 times. She hit a tree and that stopped it from flipping. She was pinned and tried to yell for help. Nobody heard her calls. Her worried family called her cell phone and she couldn't reach it. She could see it. It was on the other side of the car, lighting up. She didn't realize the extent of her injuries. She had 10 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, and her left arm and artery had been severed. The way it was pinned on the outside of my car, she's saying, the car actually created a tourniquet on my arm, which allowed me not to bleed out and die. Everybody should have a tourniquet in their kits, by the way. She survived the night, and the temperature was 21 degrees, which right now seems pretty balmy. It was pretty much live or die based on when the sun comes up. So here's a situation. She may or may not have been able to have the ability to utilize any of her equipment. But you know, what's another alternative? If you know where you're going to be driving, if you know that the conditions are less than optimal, tell people where you're going to go. Tell them the route you're going. Today I was going to possibly go elk hunting with a friend of mine, and my son said, tell me where you're going, because he knows there's no cell reception. But if they don't hear from me, people at least know where to look for you. So you have to just think a little bit more when you have conditions like this. And she has an infant and a 3-year-old too that she needed to get home to. And her survival had nothing to do with her preparedness. She was just very lucky.
Yeah.
Look at that family. Look at that family that was up there in Oregon that took the wrong road and got stuck in the snow. And it took them 9 days. The dad ended up dying because he tried to truck out in sneakers.
Yes, on my old show, I actually did an entire show on that with Brian Lee from the Sierra School of Survival. That was a family out of San Francisco. I believe it was the Kim family. It's either Kim or Lee. I apologize. I can't remember their last name. But what happened was they didn't know where they were going. They thought it'd be fun to take a country road. They were going from, I think, California to Oregon for Thanksgiving weekend. They went through a national forest and ended up on a logging road. And counterintuitively, the correct road would have been one that looked like the wrong road. And they ended up deeper and deeper into snow. They had an infant and a toddler with them. They quickly ran out of diapers. They had just barely, a few snacks. And he did the cardinal mistake. He got out of his vehicle and started to walk for help. Now, help was, I think, 20 miles away. And one thing I talked about with Brian Lee, I said, I know you and I know your family. And I think that this would have been you would have come out of this swimmingly. He goes, oh yeah, we would have had an adventure. It wouldn't have been fun, but we would have made it fun, and we would have come out of there okay, because they would have had the equipment with them. They would have had the experience. Don't drive on these roads if you don't know how to survive in the conditions through which you are going. If you're going to go through ice and snow, have cold weather kits with you. Have ways to warm yourself up. Always have water with you, whether or not you're going through hot and cold, and let people know where you're going. When we were doing one of my many motorhome trips, we were going through Death Valley, and it occurred to me, we have no cell signal, and we don't know when we'll have one. And we knew we were going towards the direction of interstate in California, 395. And but I learned after that, you know, from now on, from point A to point B, I'm going to tell a family member, like the boy's dad, this is where we are now, and this is where we're headed. Now with these apps on the phones, like with Waze or even in your messaging systems, you can text somebody your actual location. So if you have cell range, you can do that. So, you know, this time of year, it always makes me think about stuff like that.
Yeah, rule number one, don't go on a country road in the wintertime unless you know where you're going. Even the survival people tell you not to do that, and they know where they're going. It's amazing. Well, we're up. Well, no, we got 4 minutes yet.
We got time. We got some time. So anyway, I don't know. Do we want to get into our top stories of the year? No, let's keep talking a little prepping stuff here. So, any other top stories as far as prepping? As far as I mean, I know the weather. We talk about that. We're talking about the roads, traveling. Is that anything else you wanted to discuss on prepping at the end of the year here, Suzanne?
I think one of the things I want to do is I'm looking forward already for PrepperCon in spring. So I'm hoping you're coming out there.
I'm still crossing my fingers that I will make it out. I still have not seen no one's turned in vacation there. So I'm still working on trying to get that time off. But my plan is to be out there and bring the board, the computers and stuff, and we can do some live stuff right from PrepperCon.
One of the things, too, I like to talk about this time of year is everybody has their New Year's resolutions if they want to lose weight or get in shape and doing it for the sake of just doing it. But I also like to tell people being in good physical condition is a part of being prepared. And it's, to me, this is how I also tie into the political situation, because we know what the state of our healthcare is right now. What's going on in the VA is going to be happening now thanks to the Affordable Care Act. It was never going to be repealed. Even if they replace it, it's going to be something equally bad because the government's going to take it over. And my mom, I've been watching her since December with her health declining and having even more problems. And I was just on the phone a little while ago with a friend of mine whose father has problems very similar to my mom, advanced Parkinson's, dementia, and you know what they're doing to keep these people alive. And take problems that are far less serious than that and imagine how much more difficult it's going to be as the government's stranglehold on healthcare only worsens. And I want people to look at their condition and how they take care of themselves. It's even not a matter of fitness or weight, but as a matter of, do you want to prevent diseases that are preventable? Do you want to avoid them? If you smoke this year, stop. If you drink sodas, stop. If you're not exercising, start. This is, you know, health, good health is part of your preparedness kit. So I'd like to send people with that message. Try and be your strongest. Avoid diseases that you can prevent now. I've been talking to a friend of mine who's got horrible diabetes, and it's completely food induced. And this is something that you don't think about now, but 20 years from now, you're going to wish you had a do-over. So I'd like to just give people that message. Think about that now.
We just had a guy here at work that looked like he was fit, just had to have quadruple bypass and had a heart attack at Christmas time. So, yeah, it's a real eye-opener in a hurry.
It is, especially, you know, I'm 54 years old. The stuff that I wish I had started this.
No, you're 39.
Yeah, I had told my son, I wish I had been doing what I'm doing now in my 20s, but maybe I would have been tired of it by now, or maybe I would have been doing it for the wrong reason. You know, in California, they always have that you can never be too rich or too thin mentality. I know a lot of people in California now that we've gotten older that are having significant issues with their bones and osteoporosis. So again, being fit, being healthy isn't being thin, but think about the foods you eat, think about how you're exercising and taking care of yourself. And if you're smoking, for heaven's sake, stop.
Well, I'm paying the price today. I'm paying the price today for all my years of downhill skiing in my shoulders and my knees. Yeah, but you know, hey, I wouldn't have traded it for anything. I loved my years in Steamboat Springs. The Rocky Mountains are just incredibly beautiful. I'm very jealous that you still live there because I wish I lived out there, but I moved back east. Family brought me back east, and I'm not sorry that happened though either. So anyway, do we want to take a break, or do you want to just plow right through and just keep going? What's your pleasure there, Daniel?
Let's go ahead and take a break here. I got it all pinned up here.
All right.
Okay.
I am Locutus of Borg. Resistance is futile. Your life, as it has been, is over. From this time forward, you will service us.
No, we will not serve.
We want to get into now.
Well, what I asked before when we were deciding whether we can do this, what is everyone's top story of the year? And obviously, I think I have two that are big, and I'm betting that one of mine is going to be the same as probably both of yours. But I'm just going to leave it at that. I won't tell you what my number one story is because I'd be willing to bet that one of you two is going to say it right now. So whoever wants to go, give us your top couple stories of the year, maybe your number one top story.
Top story
Suzanne,
of the year.
Daniel.
Oh, I'm not muted.
I think I'll go first. I think mine, because this is a brouhaha that's developing on my Facebook page right now, is I know President Trump, yes, we know he was inaugurated in January 20th, but he campaigned on a promise of non-intervention. And it wasn't very long after he took office that he sent 56 Tomahawks into Syria based on some questionable information and the advice of known geopolitical strategist Ivanka Trump. So that had me that first got me thinking that I don't think we're going to see the international policy, the foreign policy, shape up to what I think it is. There's going to be the deep state, a lot of the neocons taking hold. And now we're seeing a lot of saber rattling with Russia. We're having the movement in Iran. And now he's saying, well, we support the people of Iran. And I think it's kind of odd that for so long now we weren't going to allow people from Iran to come to this country, but now we're supporting them. So I'm seeing a lot of inconsistencies. And I had just posted something on my Facebook page about the outrage over the killing, what I call the culling, the herd management of Cecil the lion, as well as the gorilla, what was it, Harambe? Now, Jeff, if you go to my Facebook page, you can see this. Daniel, you can as well. And the point, what was said here was, a lion was killed by a dentist, America's outraged. Gorilla killed by a zoo, America outraged. Children killed with American tax dollars, America is silent. And then I also, I'm also thinking we have this issue of murdered babies every single day with Planned Parenthood. And the comment of the person that had put this up was, how is it okay to send military overseas to murder innocent people or children who haven't done a damn thing to us? Well, of course, now a member of the military who really doesn't know me and know that I'm really about non-intervention, and I have always been supportive of veterans' causes, has decided to chime in and accuse me of calling the military murderers, and that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that we really need to get our priorities in order. We are involved as in arming the Saudis and allowing them to create unspeakable humanitarian violations in Yemen. Look what we did to Libya. We're never leaving any of these Mideast. I mean, when are we ever going to get out of Afghanistan? What have we made better over there? We have not made life better for the people of Iraq. And I don't see this changing at all. And I really had anticipated it would under Donald Trump. So to me, the biggest story is that we're not seeing an end to the wars, but I think that we're going to see more of an escalation of the same.
Well, there's just news coming out today that we're about to get into a nuclear war with North Korea and a possible naval blockade. At least that's what Fox is reporting, so that's not a good sign for interventionism.
Yeah, and this comes right on the heels when they say ISIS has, is just on the verge of being destroyed. They've lost, 90% of their territory. So my first thought was, okay, well, what's going to happen next then? If we're not going to need to have ISIS as an excuse, what is it that we're going to have? So. And for me, and this is not a popular thing, because one of the comments I said, it is the politicians that are doing this. And I say this constantly. It is the politicians that are starting this war. We've talked about the military-industrial complex, the warfare, welfare state, and what it has done for future generations and the debt we have. And I had commented on here, it's time for the military to stand up. And this guy was just apoplectic. Well, what do you mean stand up and against what? Being deployed in service of our country? Have you ever served? And that's the other thing that really gets my goat is if you haven't served, apparently you don't have a right to express an opinion about the use of our tax dollars against the use of the military. We haven't served, so we don't have a right to say, yeah, I actually do have a right. I've got two boys. One's 19, one's about to turn 18. And guess what's going to come in the mail next year? Today's my younger son's 17th birthday. Before he had even turned 18, that draft registration card was in the mail waiting for him. So I might not have served, but watch my mouth, you bet I have a say, because my boys are the ones that would be sent to fight these wars. You can say we don't have a draft now, but you want my children to register for a draft and to support these wars. And I told my son, I tore up that damn draft registration card. You can go online and register yourself. I will not be a part of it. And I'm to the point now where it's almost where we have to consider, you have to think about a drug addict. Our government is addicted to war. It makes money off of these wars. It keeps us in debt. It keeps us distracted by joining up in the military. And I'm probably going to lose a lot of followers, but not many people listen anyway. But this is something I'm going to come out and start saying publicly. If you just join the military, you are going to be enabling this government to send our forces all around. It's time to just stop. It's time to reconsider. And then to say, well, we're just following orders. Have we not heard that before? At some point, the rank and file has to say, we have to talk about this and say, this isn't right what we're doing.
Yeah, unfortunately with the military, though, that that's not possible for the enlisted rank. That would land them in prison. Right. Unfortunately, that's why it's important for the civilian population to put pressure to end this madness. And one of the things I see often, I don't know how many times I've responded to these. I've at least 3 times responded to people posting some sort of post to the extent of saying that there should be a mandatory 2-year service upon graduating high school. The government should force you to serve for 2 years. And I say, well, you want to support, you say you support the Constitution. Well, the Constitution clearly states that involuntary servitude is illegal in the 13th Amendment, is it? I believe it's the 13th.
Yeah, the 13th Amendment ended slavery. Yeah, and that's...
Slavery. And so there's people out there, and you probably seen them too, because you probably see the same people pasting the same thing. They're all for this mandatory service. Well, you know what? That really is enabling these maniacs in Washington, D.C. to go to war anywhere in the world, because then they have an unlimited pool of young men and women to send off to die in these wars that are basically making Raytheon, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, and Lockheed Martin billions of dollars in profits every year. And that's who's the beneficiary of all these. It is not the American people. It is the corporations that make the bombs.
And, you know, the other day I was on a show on K-Talk Radio out here in Sandy, Utah, and we talked about patriotism versus nationalism. And that is exactly what I'm trying to get at here when I put these posts up. I've always been supportive of veterans and veterans causes, and I'm not going to get into all that right now. I don't need to virtue signal. But what I'm really tired of is more of the same, more of the debt, more of these people suffering because we can't seem to mind our own business. I started reading this book put out by Mises.org, A Century of Warfare, and you realize the spin that has been put on so many incidents to justify throughout history our getting into one war after another. And it goes back to the Spanish-American War, and even Lincoln, after criticizing Polk for causing Mexico to essentially fire the first shot, Lincoln did the same thing with Fort Sumter to get us into the War of Northern Aggression. And you see this through the Spanish-American War, through World War I, through World War II.
And so, you know, make that argument with Franklin Delano Roosevelt with the embargo on Japan, causing them to have to fire the first shot.
Well, exactly. I mean, and then look what we used there. Justifying Lusitania. Oh, the Germans, they torpedoed a passenger ship. They were warned. Wilson or FDR, he was warned time and time again. Or was that World War I? The Lusitania, that was Johnson. I'm sorry, Wilson. So
Wilson.
They told them time and time again. Yes, Wilson was warned. Do not put passengers on these ships. You are sending arms to Great Britain. He was warned, but he didn't. The American people weren't warned. They were not able to make an informed decision. And we're just seeing more and more of this. So I'm tired of the veterans being propped up and then said, if you don't stand for the anthem, you're shaming the veterans. No, I'm tired of honoring the people that are getting them killed. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm taking over.
No. That's great. What I just wanted to add on there is that at World War I with Wilson, World War II with Roosevelt, there was no desire to end up in the war. The vast majority of the American people were non-interventionist. They wanted nothing to do with these foreign excursions. It took an event to get them involved. That's why it was so important for Roosevelt to have our Pearl Harbor, because that needed it. What got us involved in all this now? Let's see, this is 2017. So we're now talking 16-year war on terror. 16 years. We're starting year number 17 tomorrow. This is ridiculous. What did it take? It took an event. It took the killing of 3,400 and some odd people on 9/11. It took the killing of thousands of American sailors in Marines and Army, Air Army in Hawaii to get us in that war. And, I mean, you can find proof that Roosevelt knew it was coming. The people on Hawaii didn't, but Roosevelt did. And he let it happen to get us involved in the war. Why were these people on that ship going over to Europe when Wilson knew that they were going to probably get killed in a U-boat attack? Well, because he needed the
shields.
He needed to get into the war.
No, it's more sinister than that. He was using them as human shields. He was trying to play on the whole. I don't think the Geneva Convention had happened at that point, but he was trying to play on Germany wouldn't dare shooting a passenger ship. And they were trying to smuggle arms into London. While they knew London was actively engaged in a war, flying under British colors, and Germany had already told him any British colors were going to get sunk, period. And he wouldn't listen. Nobody listened. And when Germany then goes and sinks them, all of a sudden Germany's the big bad guy because how dare they? Anyway.
Here's the other question. Do you have no concept of the seriousness of the oath taken at the time of enlistment? What's that oath they're taking to? The military-industrial complex? Oh, the Constitution. That's right.
I've taken that oath, so I very well know what the oath is.
I took the oath too, and that's the thing. We are taking an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, wait a minute. You're not upholding the Constitution, and you have no intention of doing so. Yep. This is your chosen career. Stop describing. So this is, so this is not upholding the Constitution. Anyway, that hit me right before the show by somebody that doesn't really know me. And it's people don't like to be told this stuff. I had a friend of mine, a Marine veteran, who hung his flag upside down and said, yes, this was about 5 or 6 years ago. America is in distress. We're on the brink here. And somebody said, well, what do I tell the Vietnam veterans? That their efforts were wasted? And you know what? It's about time we started having an honest conversation about this. Have these sacrifices been wasted?
Well, I don't know if they've been wasted. That's a tough question because their lives were wasted by the politicians in that they were fighting the wrong war. But I don't know. That's a discussion for a show that is not almost over.
We'll do it on mine, so I don't disappoint your audience. Yeah.
We could do an entire week of shows on that topic.
Yeah. My number one was obviously Trump's election. I mean, 2017 saw Trump elected. I voted for him with high hopes that he would be the first one that actually did what he promised, because he had no track record. I had to take him at his word that he was going to, number one, end abortion. As far as I know, they're still funding it, and they're still doing it. There's no plans on ending it. And supposedly he's a big pro-life guy, but pro-life is not what it necessarily means. He was not claiming to be non-interventionist. I saw an article, and I don't have it with me, but that we have actual physical troops now on the ground in Yemen. Not only are we now paying the Saudis to murder perhaps millions of people in Yemen, now we have our special ops guys on the ground. They're fighting as well.
Oh, and so that was just
it's not enough that we're not letting the Saudis kill enough. Now we have to have our guys there actually killing them too.
And that was just justified to me by somebody saying, does the USS Cole ring a bell?
That was
well, how many
what,
how many
17
centuries
years
back
ago?
do we need to go? Oh, Jefferson went to war over there against Muslims back in the 1700s. Does that ring a bell too? I mean, come on.
Jeff,
How far back do we have to go to? Seriously,
I figured it out. The reason we had to get involved in Iraq was not for terrorism. It was because Nebuchadnezzar marched his armies across the desert and took the Jews hostage and took them back to Babylon. That's why we went
with
to
Israel.
War. Exactly. It had nothing to do with terrorists. We were defending Israel from an attack that happened 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, at least at least 5,000 years ago. Well, anyway, hey, Trump recognized Jerusalem, and the world loses its mind. And there's one good thing that might come out of that. We might actually leave the UN. Does anyone really believe that?
I don't believe it, but I'd love to see it.
We took, I think, 3.5% out of the budget. 3.
Yeah, like a few $1 million out of a.
And now people want Nikki Haley to be president.
Yeah.
Give me a break. This woman folded like a cheap lawn chair over the Virginia battle flag, and she had no idea about the history. I don't even know if she's a natural born citizen. All I know is her parents are both immigrants, but people are calling for her to be president of the United States. I don't know if her parents were citizens, if her dad was a citizen when she was born. We don't really know all this, but everybody, all of a sudden, they hear somebody talk strong at the United Nations after 8 years of an Obama administration, and now all of a sudden, our first female president's going to be Nikki Haley.
Yeah, well, she's the female version of John Bolton. We'll be in another war because of her. So that was Trump was my number one. And I would say my number two is a story that is not just one day. It was multiple days through the year, and that was all the active shooters. Having said that, today in Colorado, a deputy was killed, and a number of others, at least I think 3 others, were wounded by an active shooter. The active shooter was killed. So this was the year, I think, of the active shooter between Charlotte and you just name them. They were all over the place this year. It was.
Does it seem strange how quickly Vegas went out of the news, though?
Yeah, that was well. Quite honestly, think back to the school in Connecticut,
Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook. That was there and it disappeared. I mean, this is doing the same thing. It was there and it disappeared. Just very, very weird. On top of that, there was just so many inconsistencies. The one guy, there was multiple people that said there was firing coming from multiple directions. I mean, there was more to this than just the one shooter.
In regards to the Vegas thing, hard drives do not walk up and walk away from a computer. They're kind of bolted into the computer. His was mysteriously missing. Now, why would a dead man that's willing to die at the scene care about where his hard drive goes? That is more or less something the CIA or NSA would teach somebody to do. Dispose of your evidence because we don't want it coming back to us. And then they'd go in there and they'd actually do it if it wasn't already done. That's why they have things called cleaners. It's not so their floors are clean.
Well, to kind of go along with that, it is interesting how the Bundy case is all falling apart. You and I need to talk about that one day, Suzanne. How that's just falling apart because there was all kinds of exculpatory. Never mind. It's been a long year. Yeah, thank you, counselor. There's all kinds of stuff that they did not give that would have. It would have never got to court had they given this stuff to the defense. It would have fallen apart long ago. These people have been in prison for a long time. I'm thinking the Bundys have been at least a couple years in prison. Well, haven't they?
Here's the other thing, too. A friend of mine, his name is Bill Keebler. We were friends a few years ago, and He lived in Stockton, which is just south of Tooele in Utah, Tooele County. And I'll wrap it up so we can go to break. But he was the head of security out at Bundy Ranch. He was actually on his way to help Lavoy Finicum, too, before he was gunned down. And he told me, we spoke on the phone privately, he said, yes, there were sniper rifles trained on us. They had the red dots on people. And the government had denied that this had happened. And sure enough, now this has come out that that was true, and that the snipers were just practicing by putting their the sights and the red dots on these people, lasers on these people. And Bill Keebler is presently in custody because an FBI informant was involved in getting him charged with trying to set off a pipe bomb. So he could have testified for the defense had this FBI informant case not come up. I'm always suspect when there's a case involving an informant.
Yeah. Well, it just is interesting that how evidence can be manufactured, evidence can be suppressed by this government. There is no one person in this this union that is safe from this government. They could do anything to anyone at any time, including killing them. Look at Fulcrum. I mean, I've watched that video. I've watched that video from every angle, up above. I mean, every angle you can possibly watch that video. There is never once that he is going for a gun. Never, ever once. I'm sorry. That was an execution. There's this, and I'm in law enforcement. If I had done that in my duties in New York State, I would be looking for a lawyer.
If Finicum's black, you would have seen a completely different reaction from the media on it.
Steinle.
Because he was a white rancher.
Yep.
Nothing.
And, you know,
we don't need to take a break. Let's just keep going.
Yeah. And, you know, even out here in Utah, I'd asked neighbors how they felt. And this, again, goes to nationalism and this whole understanding or misunderstanding, I should say, of how whatever the federal government says needs to be done is presumed to be allowed. So I was talking to a friend of mine about the Bundy situation. And the response was, well, he has to pay his fees to graze his cattle just like everybody else. Well, why? Where does Congress have the authority to become managers for cattle on public lands? There isn't one, and that's how all of this started. Look at the Steinle case. I talked about that with you, Jeff, on my show. And like Daniel said, if this person had been black, there would have been rioting in the streets. But nothing. There was just crickets. That was out of the news almost immediately. But before we end the show, Daniel, perhaps we should give you a chance to talk about your top news story.
Well, my top news story was the non-story of the year, the Me Too movement. Apparently, everybody has been sexually harassed, and apparently it's so bad that these women that have functioned well for 40 plus years can no longer function. I don't know. I don't understand it. My wife, who is an actual victim with an actual court record to prove it, doesn't understand it at all. Her whole entire family with the same incident can't understand it. Because for one thing, if you're being harassed, then you report it. Unless you're welcoming the harassment to advantage your career. That we call blackmail, people. That is what it was. Stop trying to give them cover for it, because it's better to let the blackmail drop is why it's all coming out now. Now, and I'm not upset over it. I just find it hilarious that everybody took the bait on it. You got literally Democrat congressmen and senators running for the hills now, screaming because women are chasing them around with pitchforks, I guess. I don't know. It has to be a pretty big fork to be chasing Al Franken around with, but I don't think Conyers can run anymore. But you guys get the idea. It was just the biggest hocus pocus move of the entire year. And it was only done for one reason. It was done to kneecap Judge Roy Moore down in Alabama. That was the only reason any of this even started coming out. And they wanted kneecap Trump. But anyway, what was that, Suzanne?
Has Franken resigned yet?
No.
It's supposed to be effective the 1st or 2nd.
Okay.
There's
Because
people, the people of Minnesota now there's a lot of them up there that are saying from not to resign. So
Well,
I would not hold my breath that he's going to resign. I would. That's my prediction for the year.
Mine as well. I don't think he's resigning. And even if he did, they're just going to get somebody worse than him up there. I think what they're trying to do is virtue signal, throw a lot of people under the bus, like Weinstein, a lot of these politicians. So then they can point to us and say, okay, Republicans, time for you to do the right thing and impeach.
Oh, we
Donald
will.
Trump.
We will, because we're good people. And we fall for the bait every time.
I've already dubbed this. This is part of the whole new Salem witch hunt. That's where we are today. If you want to call it the McCarthy era, that's fine too. I don't care. But I've kind of dubbed it the witch hunt. You are a witch. Okay, put them in a sack and throw them in the water. If they drowned, they weren't a witch. If they don't drown, we burn them at the stake. They're a witch. Either way, you die.
I'm not a witch. Ignore the mulch in my nose.
They put the snooze on me. This is not my news.
Have we heard anything else about Moore's victims and Gloria Allred?
No, they're gone. He lost. They're all gone.
Okay, so they're no longer victimized, I guess.
No,
okay.
that was.
I can double check, but everything went away as soon as the election was finalized. Everything just went poof, like like Puff the Magic Dragon. That's how you knew it was a political assassination. There was nothing there. It would have never gotten to court. See now,
no,
and
they've proven that, and she's even now admitted that she forged the yearbook. The victim, she forged the yearbook. So they fabricated. Oh my gosh! How many laws did they break, Suzanne? They broke a bunch. They broke at least 2 or 3. She committed at least 2 or 3 felonies.
Oh yeah.
Would Roy Moore have legal footing at this point to sue for libel and slander? Could he prove a monetary loss for that because he lost the election by only like 1%? Or would
would anybody buy it? I really couldn't say. I mean, he certainly isn't going to get any sympathy because you're going to look at what he did in modern day glasses. I think at the time the age of consent was much younger in Alabama. I haven't paid too much attention to this.
It's 16 in Alabama.
But
16. So
they never proved that he did it. Even
they didn't prove it. Yeah.
Most of the people that. She's claimed that she met him at this restaurant when she worked there. And at that time, she would have been 15. And that restaurant had a hard, fast rule. They didn't hire anyone under 16.
See, the problem is...
She couldn't have possibly worked there when this supposedly happened.
He's going to have just as much trouble with his burden of proof if he were to go after her as she would in her allegations. But she only needed to persuade the court of public opinion. Right. And that, with Mitch McConnell thinking that this is his Senate, was enough to defeat Roy Moore. I don't really know that much about Alabama politics. I don't think Roy Moore was very popular in Alabama. I think somebody else would have won. Again, I'm in Utah. I care about what happens here, but this is the problem again with this national government and the 17th Amendment that made the assignment of senators, a selection away from the state legislator,
But Moore was somebody that stood up against the federal government and said that's the reason he had to be defeated. Go ahead, Daniel. I interrupted. Sorry about that.
There was a conservative that would have won in a landslide over the guy, but the problem, or over Moore. But the problem was, or Jones for that matter, but the problem was Mitch McConnell decided he was going to back the guy that was appointed by a governor that was on his way out the door for his own sex scandal.
Yes.
And instead of saying, hands off, we're going to take a step back and we'll back whoever wins the primary, Mr. McConnell decided to dip his foot in the water, and then he felt jaded because his guy didn't win the primary. And then I guarantee it'll come out eventually, because everything always does, that Mitch McConnell was part of the group that helped torpedo Judge Roy Moore in this election.
Oh yeah, we knew that. So what do you guys think? Where do you think you're going to go with the direction for your shows in the upcoming year?
I'm going to continue on with my anti-federalist stuff. That's going to be my primary emphasis. And then again, I do a little bit of dabbling in some of the prepping. I mean, not as much as you. You definitely are the prepper of this little group. But I'm going to keep going on with. I think right now I'm going to get into Patrick Henry's speeches at the Virginia ratification debates.
Awesome. How about you, Daniel?
I'll probably stay with current events for now in trucking news. The show will probably be much earlier in the day, though. 8 o'clock is going to be really late for my new schedule. I get to go to the communist hole of New York City every night, so I'd be getting back in about 3 in the morning. So we'll probably shoot for about 6 o'clock or something like that for a show if I do one. Then it'd probably be a news show.
Well, I've been trying to grapple with, I still want to do what I feel like my mission is, to bring together people that aren't prepared but understand history or want to hear about history and our constitutional history in particular, and inform those that aren't interested in the history, get them interested, those people that prep, and bring these two groups together. It's a struggle because some of the things I say, as I did today on my page, expressing my frustration with our killing people, these brown people overseas that have done nothing to us. Members of the military take strong exception to those sentiments. So I'm going to say what I have to say, and people are going to like it or they're not. We've talked about this before. I would rather be right than popular. I am going to be addressing the issues of our never-ending intervention. I will be reviewing that book and going through A Century of Warfare. I think it's very illustrative. Jeff and I will be picking apart. We have a video on Agenda 21, whose goal is to take away individuality.
Isn't this now Agenda 2030?
It's Agenda 30, but yes, but there's a video called Agenda 21 for Dummies, and I'm going to pick that apart because it's very...
Was that the video you sent me that I tore up?
It is, yes.
Okay.
And we have.
I thought that was 2030. I'm sorry. All right.
No, but the goal is to take away the individual and replace them with the collective, with that mentality. And one of the means by which they do that is to substitute government in people's lives for family. And that's what we're seeing now. And in fact, that's what happened to that elderly Army veteran who lost his home because his daughter, his family was not speaking to him, stepdaughter, I should say. So she called the VA to send some caregivers. Well, they ended up having him sign over to one of the caregiver, the power of attorney. She took all his money, displaced him from the home. When he went into the hospital for a heart condition, a heart problem, when he tried to come home, they said, sorry, the house isn't safe for you anymore. And we have an apartment. They just dumped him in an unfurnished apartment, no bed, no food, and his little dogs. So an update on that, the family has been evicted. The dogs were still there last I've heard, and they're trying to get him back into the home. And I'm going to have attorney Brian Burson, who specializes in landlord, tenant, and elder law, come on and join me when we do the show next. And we might even be getting some new shows, some new talent lined up on our network. So stay tuned there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, I would really love to see some new folks on the network, some live shows. Again, now some of it's going to have to be, you're going to have to self-produce. I self-produce myself. I do produce Suzanne. Daniel's producing us tonight. So it's not that difficult. And with Radio Co. And using YouTube, it's pretty simple. So some of these new folks will have to probably do their own shows unless they do it on a schedule that one of us, Daniel or I, can help out with. But it's, I would literally love to see our network kind of grow a little bit. Yeah, I know we're out of time. An hour is just not going to do it with three of us. But
right.
I'll see you guys in 2018. We'll talk about it more.
Thanks, guys. That was a lot of fun.
All right, that was the Renegade and the Rambler end of the year extravaganza for 2017. We look forward to seeing you next year as our regular shows start up, I believe, on the 2nd. But watch our YouTube and mainly the Facebook page, and you'll get regular updates from most likely Suzanne because, well, I'm really bad at updating social media. I'm just a trucker. I just read most of the time. But anyway, this is the end of the show. This is the end of the year for Cerberus Radio Network, where we look forward to seeing you next year. And if you like the show, please share it with other people. If you want this show to grow, we need you to share it, and we would love to see it grow. So for the end of 2017, you all have a nice day. Stay safe, and we'll see you on the flip side.